Awakened Evil. The Deadman's Box Silver Mine Axe in Hawthorne, Nevada. Chapter 1. The field trip. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the abandoned structures of the Deadman's Swingbox silver mine. The air was thick with anticipation as the bus carrying the Hawthorne High School students rumbled to a stop. The students, buzzing with excitement, quickly disembarked, their laughter echoing through the desolate landscape. "All right, everyone, stick together. And no wandering off," Mr. Thompson, the history teacher, called out, adjusting his glasses. "This place has a lot of history, and I don't want any of you becoming a part of it." A chorus of "Yes, sir," and "Got it, Mr. T," responded, but the excitement was palpable. Field trips were rare, and a visit to an actual silver mine? That was next level. As the group began their exploration, the dilapidated outbuildings drew the attention of many. They stood as silent witnesses to a bygone era, their wooden frames rotting and roofs caved in. But to the imaginative minds of teenagers, they were treasure troves waiting to be discovered. Jake, a lanky 17-year-old with a mop of curly brown hair, was particularly drawn to one of the buildings. It stood slightly apart from the others, its door hanging off one hinge. The words, "Keep out," were spray-painted across it, but that only piqued his interest further. "Dude, check this out," Jake called to his friends, Mia and Tyler, as he approached the building. Mia, a petite girl with raven black hair, rolled her eyes. "Jake, seriously? The sign says, 'Keep out.'" Tyler, always up for an adventure, grinned. "Come on, Mia. What's the worst that could happen?" Inside, the building was dark and musty, the air thick with the scent of decay. Old mining equipment lay scattered about, rusted and forgotten. But it was what lay beneath the loose floorboards that caught Jake's attention. An old iron mining pickaxe, its blade tarnished but still sharp, lay hidden beneath the debris. Jake felt an inexplicable urge to pick it up. It was as if the axe was calling out to him, its silent whisper impossible to ignore. "Whoa," Tyler breathed, looking at the axe in Jake's hands. "That's legit." Mia frowned, a shiver running down her spine. "Jake, put that down. It gives me the creeps." Jake, however, seemed entranced. It's like it's speaking to me," he murmured, his eyes glazed. Tyler laughed, trying to lighten the mood. "Bro, you've been watching too many horror movies. It's just an old pickaxe." But Mia wasn't convinced. "Jake, seriously, put it back. This place, it feels off." Jake shook his head, snapping out of his trance. "You're just being paranoid, Mia. It's just an old mine. What's the worst that could happen?" As the group made their way back to the bus, Jake clutched the pickaxe tightly, a sense of unease growing in the pit of his stomach. He tried to shake off the feeling, telling himself it was just his imagination. But as the bus pulled away, leaving the mine and its dark secrets behind, a shadowy figure watched from the distance. Its eyes, glowing with malevolence, were fixed on Jake and the axe he held. The students of Hawthorne High School returned to their everyday lives, laughing and joking about their adventure. But none of them could have predicted the darkness they had unwittingly unleashed. The Deadman's Box silver mine axe had awakened, and Hawthorne, Nevada, would never be the same again. As night fell, Jake lay in bed, the pickaxe propped up against his bedroom wall. The whispers grew louder, filling his mind with dark thoughts and visions. The axe's power was growing, and Jake was its first victim. Unbeknownst to him, The nightmare had only just begun. Chapter 2. The first signs. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Hawthorne High School, but its warmth did little to dispel the growing chill in the air. Students bustled about, their conversations a mix of weekend plans and homework woes. But amidst the usual chatter, whispers of a different kind began to spread. Jake had been absent from school for 2 days. At first, his friends assumed he was just playing hooky, enjoying an extended weekend. But when Mia tried to visit him, she found him bedridden, his skin pale and eyes sunken. He mumbled incoherently, caught in the throes of a feverish nightmare. He kept saying something about the axe, Mia confided in Tyler as they walked to class. It's like it's haunting him. Tyler frowned, concern evident in his eyes. We shouldn't have taken it from the mine. I've got a bad feeling about this. Their concerns were not unfounded. Strange occurrences began to plague the school. The electronic systems, usually reliable, started to malfunction. Classroom projectors turned on by themselves, displaying eerie, distorted images. The school's PA system emitted static-filled whispers, the words unintelligible but the tone unmistakably menacing. Students who had been on the field trip with Jake, especially those who had ventured into the dilapidated building, began to report hearing whispers. The voices were soft, almost a murmur, but their threats were clear. They spoke of retribution, of a debt to be paid. I heard it last night, one student, Sarah, whispered to her friend. It said it knows where I live, that it's coming for me. The epicenter of these disturbances seemed to be the school office, where the axe now lay on display. Encased in a glass box, it drew the attention of students and teachers alike. Its blade, though tarnished, seemed to gleam with an inner light, and those who looked too long claimed to see shadows moving within its depths. Mr. Daniels, the school's history teacher, was the first to recognize the axe. A native of Hawthorne, he had grown up on tales of the Deadman swingbox silver mine and the tragedies that had befallen those who dared to disturb its rest. He approached the axe with a sense of reverence and fear. This shouldn't be here, he murmured, his fingers hovering over the glass. It's cursed. The school's principal, Mrs. Henderson, raised an eyebrow. Cursed? Really, Daniels? I thought you were a man of science. Mr. Daniels looked up, his eyes grave. There are some things science can't explain, Henderson. This axe is one of them. It needs to be returned to where it came from. Mrs. Henderson sighed. It's just an old pickaxe, Daniels. The students are just spooked because of Jake's illness. It'll pass. But Mr. Daniels wasn't convinced. Mark my words, Henderson. If that axe isn't returned, things will get much worse. As the days passed, Jake's condition deteriorated. Doctors were baffled, unable to determine the cause of his illness. He was transferred to the local hospital, where he lay in a coma, his life hanging in the balance. Mia and Tyler, desperate to help their friend, began to research the axe's history. They uncovered tales of miners who had gone mad, of accidents and deaths that seemed to plague those who came into contact with the axe. It was said to be cursed, a vessel for a vengeful spirit that sought to claim the souls of the living. We have to return it, Mia said, her voice shaking. It's the only way to save Jake. Tyler nodded in agreement. But how? The school won't let us just take it. Mia's eyes hardened with determination. Then we'll have to steal it. As night fell, the two friends made their way to the school, armed with a plan and a sense of purpose. But they were not alone. The spirit bound to the axe was awake, and it was hungry. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of Jake and the students of Hawthorne High School. The battle between good and evil had begun, and the outcome was far from certain. Chapter 3. The voices. The once lively halls of Hawthorne High School were now filled with an oppressive silence, broken only by the hushed whispers of students. The atmosphere was thick with tension, every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights adding to the growing sense of unease. It began subtly. Students would pause in the middle of conversations, their faces going pale as they heard their names whispered in their ears. The voices were soft, almost seductive, but their messages were anything but. "I know what you did last summer," the voice would hiss to one student. "We saw you steal that money," it would accuse another. The whispers knew things, personal things, secrets that students had never shared with anyone. And they didn't stop at the students. Teachers, too, were targeted, the voices dredging up past mistakes and regrets, laying them bare for all to hear. Panic began to spread like wildfire. Students refused to be left alone, moving in groups, their eyes darting around nervously. Parents were called, meetings were held, but no one had any answers. The school's electronic systems were checked and double-checked, but no source for the voices could be found. Amidst all this, Jake's condition continued to deteriorate. He was now bedridden, his once vibrant eyes now glazed and unseeing. He would mutter to himself, his words a jumbled mix of pleas and threats. Mia and Tyler, who visited him daily, could only watch in despair as their friend slipped further and further away. The school became a hotbed of rumors and fear. Stories circulated of the cursed axe and its dark history. Some claimed to have seen shadowy figures moving in the periphery of their vision, only to disappear when they turned to look. Others spoke of cold spots, of sudden drops in temperature that left them shivering. Mr. Daniels, the history teacher, tried to calm the students, holding impromptu history lessons about the Deadman swingbox silver mine and the legends surrounding it. But his words did little to assuage their fears. "It's just stories," he would say, his voice firm. "Legends passed down through the generations. There's no such thing as curses." But even as he spoke, he couldn't help but glance nervously at the school office, where the axe lay on display, its presence a constant reminder of the darkness that had descended upon Hawthorne High School. Mia and Tyler, desperate to find a way to help Jake and put an end to the voices, began to research ways to combat the curse. They pored over old books and manuscripts, searching for any mention of the axe and its history. "We need to find a way to appease the spirit," Mia said, her eyes scanning a particularly old tome. "There has to be a ritual or something." Tyler nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he searched the internet for answers. "There's got to be something. We can't let this thing win." As the days turned into weeks, the voices grew louder and more insistent. Students began to show signs of strain, their faces pale, their eyes haunted. Sleep became a luxury, the voices invading their dreams, turning them into nightmares. The situation reached a breaking point when a student, driven to the edge by the constant whispers, lashed out, attacking a classmate. The school was put on lockdown, the police called in to restore order. The community was in an uproar. Parents demanded answers. The media descended upon the small town, their cameras and questions only adding to the chaos. Through it all, the axe remained, its blade gleaming ominously, a silent witness to the terror it had unleashed. As Mia and Tyler continued their search for answers, they stumbled upon a lead. An old journal, written by a miner who had worked in the Deadman swingbox silver mine. In it, He spoke of the axe and the ritual used to bind the spirit to it. "It's our only hope," Mia said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to try." And so, armed with knowledge and a sense of purpose, the two friends set out to confront the darkness, to put an end to the voices and save their friend. But the spirit bound to the axe was not about to go quietly. It had tasted freedom, and it would not be denied. The battle for Hawthorne High School had only just begun. Chapter 4. Lockdown. The morning had started like any other at Hawthorne High School. Students shuffled into their classrooms, teachers began their lessons, and the usual hum of activity filled the corridors. But as the clock struck 10 a.m., everything changed. Without warning, the school security system went haywire. Heavy magnetic doors slammed shut, sealing off classrooms, hallways, and exits. The windows, reinforced with security film, became impenetrable barriers. Panic set in as students and teachers realized they were trapped. Before anyone could react, the PA system crackled to life. Instead of the familiar voice of the principal or an announcement, a chilling, demonic laughter echoed throughout the school. It was a sound that would haunt the memories of all who heard it, a mocking, malevolent cackle that seemed to come from the very bowels of hell. The lights began to flicker, casting eerie shadows on the walls. One by one, they went out, plunging classrooms into an inky darkness. The only source of illumination came from the emergency exit signs, their red glow casting a sinister hue. Panic turned to outright terror. Students screamed, their voices echoing in the darkened hallways. Teachers tried to maintain order, their voices firm but tinged with fear. "We need to stay calm," Mrs. Rodriguez, the English teacher, said, her voice trembling. "There has to be a way out." But every door they tried was locked, every window unbreakable. It was as if the school had turned into a fortress, its inhabitants prisoners. In the midst of the chaos, Mia and Tyler exchanged a glance. They both knew that the axe was behind this. It was growing in power, feeding off their fear. "We need to get to the school office," Mia whispered, her eyes darting around nervously. "That's where the axe is." Tyler nodded, his face set with determination. "Let's go." The two friends made their way through the darkened hallways, using their phone flashlights to guide them. All around them, they could hear the sounds of panic and fear, the cries of students, the shouts of teachers. As they approached the school office, they noticed a faint glow coming from inside. The axe, which had been displayed in a glass case, was now glowing with an ominous light. Its blade shimmered, casting eerie patterns on the walls. Mia and Tyler exchanged a glance, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. They knew they had to confront the axe, to find a way to break its curse. But as they entered the office, they were met with a sight that sent chills down their spines. Floating above the axe was a shadowy figure, its form indistinct but its eyes glowing with malevolence. "You cannot stop me," the figure hissed, its voice echoing with 1,000 whispers. "The axe is mine, and all who dare to defy me will suffer." Mia took a deep breath, her voice firm. "We're not afraid of you. We're going to put an end to this." The figure laughed, the sound sending shivers down their spines. "You think you can defy me? You are but children, playing with forces you do not understand." Tyler stepped forward, his eyes filled with determination. "We know about the ritual. We know how to bind you back to the axe." The figure's laughter grew louder, more mocking. "You think a mere ritual can stop me? I am beyond such things. The axe is mine, and all who stand in my way will be destroyed." As the figure spoke, the axe began to levitate, its blade spinning menacingly. Mia and Tyler could feel the power emanating from it, a force that threatened to overwhelm them. But they were not alone. From the shadows, figures began to emerge, students, teachers, all those who had been trapped in the school. They formed a circle around the axe, their voices joining in a chant. The figure screamed in rage, its form beginning to dissipate. The axe, too, began to lose its glow, its power waning. With one final scream, the figure vanished, leaving Mia, Tyler, and the others standing in the now brightly lit school office. The lockdown was over. The school's security system returned to normal, the doors unlocking and the lights coming back on. Students and teachers emerged from their classrooms, their faces pale but their spirits unbroken. The axe, now just a lifeless piece of metal, lay on the floor of the school office. Its reign of terror was over. But as Mia and Tyler looked at each other, they knew that their battle was just beginning. The axe may have been defeated, but the darkness it had unleashed was still out there, waiting for its next victim. Chapter 5. The first victim. The aftermath of the lockdown left Hawthorne High School in a state of uneasy tension. Whispers of the axe and the shadowy entity filled the hallways, turning the once lively school into a place of fear and suspicion. But for all the rumors and stories, many still believed it was just a prank or a technical glitch until Mark's incident. Mark Thompson was a name everyone at Hawthorne knew, and not for good reasons. Tall, with a broad build and a sneer that seemed permanently etched on his face, Mark was the school's notorious bully. From stolen lunch money to cruel pranks, he had made life miserable for many. But even he didn't deserve what happened that fateful day. It was during third period, in the middle of a math lesson, when it began. The lights in the classroom flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. A cold breeze swept through the room, despite the windows being shut. Then, the whispers started, soft at first, but growing louder, more insistent. Mark, seated at the back of the class, suddenly stiffened. His eyes, usually filled with arrogance, now showed pure terror. He clutched his desk, his knuckles turning white, as the whispers seemed to converge on him. "Please. Stop," he croaked, his voice barely audible. But the entity was relentless. To the horror of the classmates, Mark's once robust figure began to wither. His skin turned a sickly gray, his eyes sinking into their sockets. It was as if the very life was being drained out of him. The class watched in frozen horror, unable to move, unable to help. Within minutes, Mark's once imposing figure was reduced to a withered husk, his lifeless eyes staring blankly ahead. The room erupted into chaos. Students screamed, scrambling over desks to get away. The teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, tried to maintain order, but her voice was drowned out by the sheer hysteria. The school's alarm bells rang out, signaling an emergency evacuation. But the panic had already taken hold. Students trampled over each other in their haste to escape, their faces pale, their eyes wide with terror. In the midst of the chaos, Mia and Tyler found each other. Their faces grim, they knew that the entity was growing in power, feeding off the fear and panic. "We have to do something," Mia said, her voice shaking. "It's getting stronger." Tyler nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We need to find a way to stop it, once and for all." But as they made their way through the panicked crowd, they realized that the entity was not done. The PA system crackled to life, and the now familiar demonic laughter echoed throughout the school. "You cannot escape," the voice hissed. "You are all mine." The school's security system activated once again, the doors slamming shut, trapping everyone inside. The lights flickered, plunging the hallways into darkness. Mia and Tyler exchanged a glance, their resolve unwavering. "We need to get to the axe," Mia said. "It's the key to all of this." But the path to the school office was not going to be easy. The entity had unleashed its full power, and the school had turned into a maze of shifting hallways and moving walls. As they made their way through the darkened corridors, they could hear the whispers growing louder, more insistent. The entity was close, and it was hungry. But Mia and Tyler were not alone. Other students, those who had witnessed the entity's power firsthand, joined them. Together, they formed a united front, determined to put an end to the nightmare. The battle for Hawthorne High School had reached its climax. The entity, fueled by fear and chaos, was at its most powerful. But the students, united in their resolve, were not going to go down without a fight. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the school and its inhabitants. The darkness was closing in, but hope, however faint, still remained. Chapter 6. Desperate measures outside Hawthorne High School. A sea of frantic parents and emergency responders had gathered. The school's once welcoming facade now seemed more like the impenetrable walls of a fortress. Every entrance was sealed, every window impervious to breakage. The entity's power was palpable, a malevolent force keeping them at bay. "Get my child out of there," one mother screamed, her voice hoarse with desperation. Firefighters aimed their hoses at the main doors, hoping the force of the water would break them down. But the water simply splashed harmlessly off, as if repelled by an invisible shield. Police officers tried to calm the crowd, their voices amplified by bullhorns. "We're doing everything we can," they assured. But their faces, lined with worry, betrayed their own doubts. Inside the school, the atmosphere was thick with fear. The once familiar hallways and classrooms now felt alien, distorted by the entity's malevolent influence. But amidst the panic, pockets of resistance were forming. Students, realizing the futility of individual action, began to form groups. They shared stories, piecing together the events of the past few days, trying to find a pattern, a weakness they could exploit. In the school's library, Mia, Tyler, and a group of other students pored over old newspapers and books, searching for any mention of the Deadman swingbox silver mine and the cursed axe. They were joined by Mr. Daniels, the history teacher, who provided valuable insights into the town's past. "We need to understand the axe's origin," he said, his voice firm. "Only then can we hope to combat its power." As they researched, a weak voice called out. It was Jake, who, despite his weakened state, had been brought to the library by a group of friends. He was pale, his eyes glazed, but there was a clarity to his voice that hadn't been there before. "I've seen it," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "In my dreams. Visions of the axe's past." All eyes turned to him as he began to recount his visions. He spoke of miners, their faces covered in soot, working in the depths of the Deadman swingbox silver mine. He described a ritual, performed under a blood-red moon, where the axe was imbued with dark power. And he spoke of a betrayal, a miner who sought to use the axe for his own gain, only to be consumed by its power. As Jake's story unfolded, a plan began to form. The axe was the key. If they could destroy it, they could break the entity's hold on the school. A group of students, armed with tools from the school's workshop, made their way to the office where the axe was displayed. Their determination was palpable, their steps resolute. But as they approached the axe, they felt a wave of cold air, a force pushing them back. Undeterred, they swung their tools at the glass case, but it remained unbroken. The axe, sensing their intent, began to glow, its power surging. Then, without warning, the students were thrown back, their bodies slamming into the walls. The axe's power was too strong, its defense impenetrable. Back in the library, the group heard the screams, their hearts sinking. They had underestimated the axe's power, and now they were paying the price. But all was not lost. Jake, his voice weak but filled with determination, spoke up. "There's another way," he said. "A ritual, to bind the axe's power." All eyes turned to him as he began to outline the plan. It was risky, fraught with danger, but it was their only hope. The battle for Hawthorne High School was far from over. The entity's power was growing, but so was the students' resolve. They were determined to fight, to reclaim their school, and to put an end to the nightmare once and for all. Chapter 7. The entity's wrath. The darkened hallways of Hawthorne High School echoed with the sounds of whispered prayers and stifled sobs. The entity, emboldened by its recent victories, was on the offensive. Its power, once confined to the axe, now permeated every brick and beam of the school. The very walls seemed to pulse with malevolence. Students who dared to defy or resist the entity's influence were targeted with particular cruelty. Sarah, a senior known for her defiant spirit, was found in a state of catatonia, her eyes wide with terror, her lips mouthing silent screams. Another student, Liam, was discovered in the gym, his body contorted in an unnatural pose, a look of sheer horror frozen on his face. But physical torment was just one of the entity's weapons. It delved deep into the minds of the students, unearthing their darkest fears and insecurities. Horrific visions plagued them, turning their waking hours into a living nightmare. Lucy, a freshman, was tormented with visions of her parents, their faces twisted in disappointment, their voices dripping with disdain. "You're a failure," they would hiss, their words cutting deep. "You'll never amount to anything." Tyler, already guilt-ridden over Jake's condition, was haunted by images of his friend, accusing him of betrayal. "You left me," Jake's vision would whisper, his voice filled with pain. "You abandoned me to the darkness." In the midst of this psychological onslaught, Mr. Daniels, the history teacher, gathered a group of students in his classroom. With the blinds drawn and the door barricaded, he began to share legends of the cursed axe, tales passed down through generations. The axe, he began, his voice low, was not always a tool of evil. It was forged by a master blacksmith, its blade sharp and true. But its power was coveted by many, leading to betrayal and bloodshed. He spoke of a miner, consumed by greed, who performed a dark ritual to bind a malevolent spirit to the axe. The spirit, once a guardian of the mine, was twisted and corrupted, its power growing with each act of violence. "The axe's curse can be broken," Mr. Daniels continued, "but it requires a sacrifice, a pure heart willing to confront the darkness." All eyes turned to Jake, who, despite his weakened state, radiated an inner strength. His friends, Mia, Tyler, and others, rallied around him, their determination unwavering. "We're with you, Jake," Mia said, her voice firm. "We'll face this together." But the entity was not about to be defeated easily. Its power reached its peak, causing chaos throughout the school. The PA system blared out a cacophony of screams and laughter, the lights flickering in a maddening pattern. The very air grew thick and oppressive, making it hard to breathe. In the school's auditorium, the entity made its presence known. The curtains drew back, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness, its center a void of absolute black. From this void, shadowy figures emerged, their forms indistinct but their intent clear. The students, led by Jake and his friends, formed a defensive circle, their faces set with determination. They began to chant, their voices rising in a crescendo, their words a beacon of hope in the darkness. The entity roared in rage, its power lashing out, seeking to break their resolve. But the students held firm, their unity a shield against the darkness. The battle raged on, the very fabric of reality seeming to warp and twist. But through it all, the students' voices remained strong, their chant a beacon of hope. And then, with a final, deafening roar, the entity was banished, the vortex collapsing in on itself, leaving behind only silence. The students, exhausted but triumphant, looked around in disbelief. The nightmare was over, the curse of the axe broken. But the cost had been high. The school was in ruins, many of its inhabitants forever scarred by the events of the past few days. But through it all, one thing was clear. The strength of the human spirit, the power of unity and friendship, could overcome even the darkest of evils. Chapter 8. The past revealed the atmosphere in Mr. Daniels' classroom was thick with anticipation. The room, usually filled with the hum of students discussing historical events, was now a makeshift research center. Old newspapers, town records, and dusty books were spread out on every available surface. The walls were covered in hastily scribbled notes, maps of the Deadman swingbox silver mine, and pictures of the cursed axe. Mr. Daniels, his usually neat appearance now disheveled from days of relentless research, stood at the front of the room. His audience, a group of students including Mia, Tyler, and Jake, waited with bated breath. The axe, he began, his voice grave, has a history far darker than we could have imagined. He recounted tales of the axe's creation, forged by a master blacksmith for a miner named Elijah. Elijah, it turned out, was not just any miner. He was a man obsessed with power and wealth, willing to go to any lengths to achieve his goals. Elijah discovered a ritual, Mr. Daniels continued, one that promised untold power. But it required a sacrifice. The room grew colder as he described the fateful night. Under the blood-red moon, Elijah performed the ritual, using the axe as a conduit. But something went terribly wrong. Instead of granting him power, the ritual trapped a malevolent spirit within the axe. This spirit, Mr. Daniels said, his voice barely above a whisper, is not just any spirit. It's ancient, vengeful, and feeds on fear and suffering. The students exchanged uneasy glances. The events of the past few days made sense now. The axe was not just a tool of evil. It was a prison for a spirit seeking vengeance. But the revelations didn't end there. Mr. Daniels turned his gaze to Jake, his expression somber. "Jake," he said, "there's something you need to know." Jake, already pale from his ordeal, looked even more stricken. "What is it?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Elijah, the miner who first discovered the axe," Mr. Daniels began, "is your ancestor." The room was silent, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Jake was not just a random victim. He was targeted because of his bloodline. "But there's hope," Mr. Daniels continued. "The records mention a way to appease the spirit, to break the curse once and for all." All eyes were on him as he explained. The axe, it seemed, had to be returned to its resting place, the very spot where the ritual had gone wrong. Only then could the spirit be appeased, its thirst for vengeance quenched. The task was clear, but the path ahead was fraught with danger. The entity, sensing its impending doom, would not go down without a fight. But Jake, with the support of his friends and the knowledge of his lineage, was determined. He would confront his family's dark past, face the vengeful spirit, and put an end to the nightmare once and for all. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The students, armed with knowledge and united in their resolve, were ready to face the darkness. The battle for Hawthorne High School, and for Jake's very soul, was about to begin. Chapter 9. The journey. The early morning sun cast a golden hue over Hawthorne, but the beauty of the dawn did little to lift the heavy atmosphere that had settled over the town. At the edge of the school's grounds, a group of students gathered, their faces etched with determination and fear. At the center of the group stood Jake, clutching the cursed axe, its cold metal seeming to leach the warmth from his already weakened body. "We don't have to do this," Mia whispered, her eyes filled with concern as she looked at Jake. "There has to be another way." Jake shook his head, his gaze resolute. "It's my family's legacy," he replied. "I have to set things right." Tyler, always the pragmatist, had mapped out the quickest route to the Deadman swingbox silver mine. "It won't be easy," he warned. "The entity knows what we're trying to do. It'll do everything in its power to stop us." And he was right. No sooner had the group set out than they felt the entity's presence. The air grew cold, the sun's warmth blocked out by an unnatural fog that seemed to spring up from nowhere. The path, which should have been straightforward, twisted and turned, the landscape shifting as if trying to throw them off course. But the group pressed on, their bond stronger than any malevolent force. They faced numerous challenges, from treacherous terrain to the entity's attempts to turn them against each other. The voices, once whispers, now screamed in their ears, dredging up their deepest fears and insecurities. "You're not strong enough," they taunted Jake. "You'll fail, just like your ancestor." Mia, too, was not immune. "He doesn't need you," the voices hissed. "You're just holding him back." But for every challenge, for every attempt to break their spirit, the group found strength in each other. They leaned on one another, their bond unbreakable. As they neared the mine, the entity's attacks grew more desperate. The ground shook, trees uprooted themselves, blocking their path. But the group was undeterred. They had come too far to give up now. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance to the Deadman swingbox silver mine. The dilapidated outbuildings stood as silent sentinels, a grim reminder of the town's dark past. But the hardest part was yet to come. The mine's entrance loomed before them, a gaping maw that seemed to swallow all light. The voices were deafening now, a cacophony of screams and taunts that threatened to overwhelm them. Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. With the group by his side, he stepped into the darkness, the weight of his family's legacy and the hopes of the entire town resting on his shoulders. The battle for Hawthorne was far from over. The group had faced numerous challenges, but the true test of their resolve, their courage, and their friendship was just beginning. The darkness of the mine, and the entity that dwelled within, awaited. Chapter 10. The ritual. The air inside the Deadman swingbox silver mine was thick with tension. The oppressive darkness seemed to press in from all sides, making the narrow beams of their flashlights seem feeble and inadequate. The walls of the mine echoed with the distant, haunting whispers of the entity, its presence palpable. Jake led the way, the cursed axe heavy in his hands. Behind him, Mia, Tyler, and the others followed closely, their faces etched with a mix of determination and fear. Mr. Daniels, the history teacher, had insisted on joining them, his knowledge of the ritual and the mine's history invaluable. "We need to find the exact spot," Mr. Daniels said, his voice barely audible over the echoing whispers. "The ritual must be performed precisely where it was first done." As they delved deeper into the mine, the entity's power grew more pronounced. The temperature dropped sharply, their breaths visible in the cold air. The walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and the voices grew louder, more insistent. "You can't stop me," they taunted. "You're too weak." Jake felt the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him. The voices sought to exploit his doubts, his fears. But he pushed forward, the support of his friends bolstering his resolve. After what felt like hours, they reached a large cavern. The remnants of old mining equipment lay scattered about, rusted and forgotten. In the center of the room was a raised platform, and beneath it, the telltale signs of loose floorboards. "This is it," Mr. Daniels whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is where the ritual was performed." The group gathered around the platform, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Mr. Daniels began to instruct them, his voice firm. "We must recreate the ritual exactly," he said. "Every word, every gesture. It's the only way to appease the spirit and seal the entity away." As they began the ritual, the entity fought back with all its might. The ground shook, the walls of the mine seeming to close in on them. The voices grew deafening, a cacophony of screams and taunts that threatened to drown out Mr. Daniels' instructions. Each member of the group was tested, the entity delving deep into their minds, unearthing their deepest fears and insecurities. Mia was tormented with visions of her family, their faces twisted in disappointment. Tyler saw himself alone, abandoned by all those he cared about. But through it all, the group held firm. They leaned on each other, their bond stronger than any malevolent force. With Mr. Daniels' guidance, they completed the ritual, their voices rising in a powerful chant that echoed throughout the mine. With the final word spoken, Jake stepped forward, the cursed axe in hand. He approached the platform, his movements deliberate, his purpose clear. With a deep breath, he placed the axe back under the floorboards, sealing the entity away. The oppressive atmosphere lifted immediately. The whispers faded, replaced by a profound silence. The group, exhausted but triumphant, looked around in disbelief. The nightmare was over. As they made their way out of the mine, the first rays of dawn breaking on the horizon, they knew they had faced true evil and emerged victorious. The town of Hawthorne would forever bear the scars of the entity's wrath, but thanks to the bravery of Jake and his friends, it was finally free. The Deadman Swingbox silver mine, once a place of darkness and despair, was now a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope could prevail. Chapter 11. Aftermath. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold as the students of Hawthorne High School emerged from their nightmarish ordeal. The once imposing security doors, which had turned the school into a prison, now stood open, their electronic systems humming back to life. The school's PA system, previously a source of terror, now played a soft melody, a stark contrast to the demonic laughter that had once echoed through its speakers. Inside the school, the atmosphere was one of relief mixed with grief. While many had survived the entity's wrath, others had not been so fortunate. The loss of classmates, friends who had been drained of life by the malevolent force, weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Jake, who had been at the epicenter of the horror, showed signs of recovery. The dark circles under his eyes, a testament to his weakened state, began to fade, replaced by a clarity that spoke of a newfound purpose. But those close to him could see the change. The once carefree teenager was now a young man who had stared into the abyss and come out the other side forever altered. Mia and Tyler, who had stood by Jake's side throughout the ordeal, found solace in each other. Their bond, forged in the crucible of adversity, was unbreakable. They, along with other students, organized memorial services for those who had been lost, turning the school's auditorium into a sanctuary of remembrance. Hawthorne High School, which had once been just another educational institution, now became a symbol of resilience and unity. The town's residents, many of whom had been skeptical of the tales of the cursed axe, now viewed the school with a mix of awe and reverence. The students, once divided by cliques and rivalries, now stood united, their shared experience a testament to the strength of the human spirit. News of the events at Hawthorne spread far and wide, drawing media attention and curious onlookers. But the town's residents were protective of their story, wary of those who sought to exploit their pain for profit. They turned away film crews and sensationalist reporters, choosing instead to share their story on their own terms. The legend of the Deadman's axe, once a mere footnote in the town's history, now became a cautionary tale. Parents told their children of the dangers of disturbing the past, of the consequences of awakening forces best left dormant. The old saying, "Let sleeping dogs lie," took on a new meaning in Hawthorne. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, life in Hawthorne began to return to normal. But the events of that fateful night left an indelible mark on the town and its residents. They had faced true evil and emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. The Deadman's axe, now sealed away in the depths of the mine, became a symbol of the town's resilience. It stood as a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope could prevail. But it also served as a warning, a testament to the dangers of tampering with forces beyond human understanding. And so, as the years passed and the memories of that night began to fade, the legend of the Deadman's axe lived on, a cautionary tale for generations to come. Chapter 12. The new normal. The corridors of Hawthorne High School, once filled with the cacophony of students' laughter and chatter, now echoed with a somber silence. The walls, which had witnessed the terror of the entity's wrath, seemed to hold the memories of that fateful night. But amidst the quiet, there was a palpable sense of resilience, a determination to move forward. In the aftermath of the ordeal, the school's administration, recognizing the trauma that the students and staff had endured, brought in counselors and therapists. These professionals, trained to deal with post-traumatic stress, set up makeshift offices in the school's library. Students were encouraged to share their experiences, to process their emotions, and to find a way to heal. Jake, Mia, Tyler, and the others who had been at the forefront of the battle against the entity, found solace in each other. Their shared experience, having faced the unimaginable together, had forged a bond that was unbreakable. They met regularly, sometimes in formal counseling sessions, and at other times in informal gatherings, where they shared stories, laughed, cried, and supported one another. But as the days turned into weeks, rumors began to spread. Whispers of the haunted school reached far and wide, drawing the attention of paranormal enthusiasts, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. They descended upon Hawthorne, their cameras and equipment in tow, hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural. The town's residents, protective of their story and wary of outsiders, met them with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Mr. Daniels, The history teacher, who had played a pivotal role in uncovering the axe's dark past, found himself at the center of the media frenzy. Recognizing the responsibility that came with his knowledge, he decided to write a book about the experience. Titled, The Curse of the Deadman's Axe, A Cautionary Tale, the book delved into the history of the axe, the ritual, and the events that had transpired at Hawthorne High School. His hope was that by sharing the story, he could prevent future incidents and ensure that the axe remained undisturbed. The book became an instant bestseller, drawing both praise and criticism. Some lauded Mr. Daniels for his thorough research and compelling narrative, while others accused him of sensationalism. But amidst the debates and discussions, one thing was clear. The legend of the Deadman's axe had become an integral part of Hawthorne's identity. As the months passed and life began to return to a semblance of normalcy, the axe, sealed away in the depths of the mine, remained undisturbed. But its presence was always felt. Students often spoke of a cold breeze that would sweep through the corridors, or of an inexplicable feeling of being watched. Some even claimed to have seen ghostly apparitions, though these accounts were often met with skepticism. But for Jake and his friends, the memories of that night were all too real. They had faced true evil and emerged victorious, but the scars, both physical and emotional, remained. They had become the guardians of the axe's legend, a responsibility they bore with a mix of pride and trepidation. And so, as the years passed and the memories began to fade, the new normal took hold. Hawthorne High School, once just another educational institution, had become a symbol of resilience, unity, and hope. But it also served as a reminder, a testament to the dangers of tampering with forces beyond human understanding. The Deadman's axe, though hidden from view, remained a constant presence, its legacy forever etched in the annals of Hawthorne's history. Chapter 13. Lingering shadows. The sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Hawthorne High School, its golden rays filtering through the trees and dappling the walkways. But even as life buzzed around, an undercurrent of unease persisted. The school had become a beacon of resilience, a testament to the indomitable spirit of its students and staff. Yet, some scars ran too deep to be easily forgotten. Whispers of lingering supernatural activity began to circulate. Some students, especially those who had been closest to the events surrounding the Deadman's axe, claimed to still hear hushed voices when the hallways were empty. These murmurs, though faint, carried an eerie familiarity, echoing the chilling threats of the entity they had faced. Jake, who had borne the brunt of the entity's wrath, found himself grappling with the aftermath. The physical wounds had healed, but the emotional and psychological scars remained. He often woke up drenched in sweat, the haunting memories of that night playing out in his dreams. Crowded places made him anxious, and the once familiar corridors of the school now felt oppressive. Diagnosed with PTSD, he began attending therapy, trying to find a way to come to terms with the trauma. The school, recognizing the need for collective healing, organized a memorial for the students who had been lost to the entity's malevolence. A serene corner of the school's garden was chosen, and a beautiful stone monument, engraved with the names of the lost, was erected. Students, staff, and parents gathered, candles in hand, their faces illuminated by the soft glow. Tears were shed, stories were shared, and as the night deepened, a sense of unity enveloped everyone. They were bound by shared grief, but also by a shared determination to remember and honor the lost. The rumors of lingering supernatural activity drew the attention of paranormal investigators. A team, known for their popular television show, decided to visit Hawthorne High School. Their aim was to communicate with any spirits that might still be present and to provide closure, both for the spirits and for the living. Equipped with an array of devices, from EVP recorders to infrared cameras, the team set up their base in the school's auditorium. As night fell, they began their investigation. The school, devoid of its usual hustle and bustle, took on an eerie quality. Every creak, every rustle, seemed amplified. Hours passed with minimal activity. But just as the team was beginning to lose hope, one of their devices, designed to translate electromagnetic frequencies into audible speech, crackled to life. The room grew cold, and a palpable tension filled the air. And then, a chilling message was received: "The axe is quiet, but we are still here." The words, though simple, sent shivers down the spines of all present. The entity might have been contained, but the spirits, the souls that had been tormented and consumed, were still trapped, their cries echoing through the very walls of the school. The revelation was a sobering reminder of the events that had transpired. The battle with the entity might have been won, but the war was far from over. The spirits, their pain and anguish palpable, demanded acknowledgement, a voice. As dawn broke, the paranormal team packed up their equipment, their faces pale and drawn. They had come seeking answers, but they left with more questions. The school, once a place of learning and growth, was now a nexus of supernatural activity, its halls echoing with the whispers of the past. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the students and staff of Hawthorne High School came to a realization. They were the guardians of a legacy, a story that needed to be told. The Deadman's axe might have been silenced, but the voices, the lingering shadows of those who had been lost, remained, a haunting reminder of the price of tampering with forces beyond comprehension. Chapter 14. Unfinished business. The days following the paranormal team's visit were filled with hushed conversations and whispered speculations. The chilling message they'd received had reignited the fears and anxieties of the students and staff of Hawthorne High School. But for Jake, the message was more than just a haunting reminder of the past. It was a call to action. Sitting in the school's library, surrounded by stacks of old books and newspaper clippings, Jake pored over the history of the Deadman Swingbox silver mine. The axe's spirit might have been contained, but the message had made it clear that other spirits had been awakened, their restlessness palpable. Mia and Tyler, ever loyal, joined him in his quest for answers. Together, they pieced together a story that had been lost to time. The mine, it seemed, had been the site of a tragic accident, one that had claimed the lives of several miners. Their spirits, trapped and tormented, had been awakened by the events surrounding the axe. Determined to find peace for the restless souls, Jake and his friends decided to investigate further. Their research led them to a forgotten part of the school's history, a series of tunnels that ran beneath the building, connecting it to the mine. Armed with flashlights and a sense of purpose, the group ventured into the tunnels. The air was thick with dust, and the narrow passageways seemed to stretch on forever. But as they delved deeper, they began to feel a presence, the weight of countless souls watching them. Suddenly, their flashlights illuminated the ghostly figures of miners, their faces etched with pain and sorrow. The spirits, though initially wary, seemed to recognize the group's intent. They communicated through faint whispers and ethereal gestures, their stories of loss and longing echoing through the tunnels. Jake, Mia, and Tyler listened, their hearts heavy with empathy. The miners spoke of their dreams and aspirations, of families left behind, and of the tragic accident that had trapped them in a state of limbo. They sought release, a chance to move on and find peace. Realizing the enormity of the task before them, Jake and his friends knew they had to confront their fears once again. Drawing on their previous experience, they devised a plan to help the spirits find peace. With Mr. Daniel's guidance, they performed a ritual, one that would allow the miners to cross over to the other side. The tunnels, once filled with the sounds of whispered conversations and ghostly apparitions, grew silent. The miners, their faces now filled with gratitude, began to fade away, their spirits finally at rest. As Jake, Mia, and Tyler emerged from the tunnels, the weight of their responsibility lifted. They looked at each other with a mix of exhaustion and relief. They had faced the unimaginable, not once, but twice, and had emerged stronger for it. The school, which had once been a place of fear and uncertainty, now stood as a testament to the power of friendship and determination. The spirits of the Deadman Swingbox silver mine might have been silenced, but the legacy of Jake and his friends lived on, a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. Chapter 15. Final goodbyes. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over Hawthorne High School. The once bustling corridors were now silent, save for the soft murmurs of Jake, Mia, Tyler, and a few others who had joined their mission. They stood in a circle, candles flickering, as they prepared to conduct the final series of rituals to release the remaining trapped spirits. The journey into the mine had revealed the depth of the tragedy that had befallen the miners. Each spirit had a story, a life cut short, dreams unfulfilled. The group knew that to truly bring peace, they would need to delve deeper, both into the mine and into their own souls. As they ventured further, the challenges they faced grew. The narrow tunnels became treacherous, with sudden drops and unstable ground. But the physical challenges paled in comparison to the emotional ones. Each spirit they encountered brought with it a wave of sorrow, grief, and regret. The weight of their pain was almost unbearable. But the most challenging confrontation was yet to come. As they reached the heart of the mine, Jake came face to face with the spirit of his ancestor, the original discoverer of the cursed axe. The spirit, a reflection of Jake's own features but worn and weary, looked at him with a mix of sadness and hope. Jake, his heart heavy, approached the spirit. He spoke of the events that had transpired, of the pain and suffering that the axe had caused. He sought forgiveness, not just for himself, but for his ancestors' actions. The spirit, tears in its eyes, spoke of its own regrets, of the lure of the axe's power, and of the unintended consequences of its actions. The two, separated by generations but bound by blood, found common ground. They spoke of family, of legacy, and of the responsibility that came with it. And as they spoke, a sense of understanding and forgiveness filled the air. With the spirit's blessing, Jake and his friends conducted the final ritual. They chanted, their voices echoing through the mine, as they called upon the powers that be to release the trapped souls. One by one, the spirits began to fade, their forms becoming translucent, before disappearing entirely. The mine, once a place of darkness and despair, was now filled with a sense of peace. The spirits, finally free, had moved on, leaving behind a legacy of hope and redemption. As Jake, Mia, Tyler, and the others emerged from the mine, they were greeted with cheers and applause. The town's residents, who had watched with bated breath, now celebrated their heroes. They had faced the darkness, both within and without, and had emerged stronger for it. The school, which had once been a symbol of fear, was now a beacon of hope. The students returned, their heads held high, proud of their school's legacy. The teachers, inspired by the events, incorporated the story into their lessons, ensuring that the legend of the Deadman's axe and the heroes who had faced it would never be forgotten. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, life in Hawthorne returned to normal. But the events of that fateful year left an indelible mark on the town and its residents. They had faced true evil and had emerged victorious. And in doing so, they had learned the true meaning of courage, friendship, and sacrifice. We hope you have enjoyed our storytelling offering tonight. Please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to be alerted of future weekly additions to our collections. Paranormal Untold Stories.